Hi, everybody. I'm Callie St. Clair, otherwise known as Consciously Callie on social media. And I'm here today having another conversation with Kaylee Anello. And she is the Ripened Heart on social media. So I'll be sure to post both of our link and information here in the show notes so that you guys can dive deeper into her work and some of our other conversations because you'll want to start at the beginning if you haven't already listened to some of our other previous chats. But I'm really looking forward to this one because it's been a minute. It's been too long.
I know it's been like time has gone by so fast that it feels like a lifetime since we recorded and also like no time at all has passed.
It's definitely sped by like the blink of an eye, just like we were just talking about here before I pressed record with how much time has sped up since last March. And I'm sure everybody else has been feeling that, how the days have turned into weeks and turned into months. So, speaking of that, we haven't had a conversation since the transits that happened on December 21st of 2020. So, how are you? What has happened for you since then?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people have felt like in their life they're in a time of transition where it's like it feels like they're trying to plan ahead for their lives, but it feels like being in limbo where you want to move forward, but you're not quite sure what it's going to look like or what steps you have to take. Maybe you try to plan ahead and then you find out that that actually wasn't the right solution. That's a lot of what I've been seeing with clients and just talking to people in January, especially. There's a lot of Neptune influence going on right now. Basically, like in astrology speak, Neptune is squaring the nodes of the moon. So the moon is our emotions, and Neptune can cause a lot of illusion and delusion and kind of give us a hazy perception of not only what's going on in the world, which we've seen, like there's a lot of confusion of like what is going on. We can't get a straight answer on literally anything in the news these days. There's like always at least three sides to every story. And so we don't know what's actually happening. And then we can see that also play out on a personal level, like in our personal lives. It can be hard to get clarity on what we want and where we want to go moving forward. So it's like Neptune squaring the nodes. It's kind of like a limbo feeling right now because it's been a super prominent energy that's been in the month of January. And with the nodes of the moon right now are in Gemini and Sagittarius. So basically what the nodes of the moon are, our north node is the energy that we want to go towards to make improvements in our lives. It's the energy that we need to embody more of. Whereas the south node is kind of the negative patterns that we need to shed and let go of in order to move forward. And so, with the North Node being in Gemini and the South Node being in Sagittarius, you've seen that playing out a lot with like two groups on either end of the spectrum coming together and butting heads. And I'm right and you're wrong. And there's been a lot of fights on social media, a lot of people getting censored and banned. And meanwhile, both parties, like both camps on either side of the road, whether it's about a certain thing happening in the world or a political, it can be anything. Whenever there's two sides of the spectrum, neither party like really has the full story of what's going on. And so there's even been confusion like within their side and within their belief system that they've had to confront. And so then with like a bunch of Mars energy being thrown into the picture as well, it's like, I want to fight you, but I don't really even know the answer either. But I don't want to admit that I don't really fully know the full answer because of Neptune delusion. So like Sagittarius can get really dogmatic about their beliefs. And so that's something that we're trying to let go of as a collective right now is being super dogmatic and kind of like having a religiosity to it. Like I will die for my belief, whether or not it's right or wrong. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to look at your perspective. Whereas Gemini, like the energy that we're supposed to be going toward is like, let me see all sides of this. Let me gather more information before I emotionally react to you. Let me take a step aside and see it from your perspective. And it's about really questioning your beliefs. Why do you believe the things you do? Do you need to update those beliefs? Are they still serving you? And so that's why we see like all this butting of heads, but also like a lack of clarity, because then Neptune comes in and squares that. So that's a conflicting energy of like, can't really see things clearly, but also not being able to let go of your delusions. And so that's a lot of what I've observed. Personally, it showed up for me as well. Like, I was really trying to figure out if I wanted to move, and I just could not make up my mind. Like, I would go back and forth and back and forth. And, my partner and I talked about it like probably like 10 times in January. Like, okay, we want to move, but we don't have clarity on where we want to move. So, like, is it really a good idea? But we couldn't like let go of it.
Mhm.
And so it's like that Neptune fog of like, we don't know what our next steps are, but we're feeling restless. So we want to make a choice, even if it's probably doesn't make sense. And so I feel like as we move into February, there's going to be a lot more clarity, luckily. The transits are a little bit better. January is by far the toughest month, actually, energetically of 2021, which is why I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's just been there's so much that we could talk about in terms of that energy, but I feel like I've seen that shift within the last week. Like, there's been more clarity that's coming, and that will just continue to be the case in February. We're definitely not out of the woods yet, but I know, like, personally and with my friends, like, there's been a lot of resolutions in the past week of like, okay, either you make a decision, you're like, we should wait out the Neptunian fog and stop fighting against it. Or like an actual resolution. Like, a lot of my friends have like been moving lately and like changing location. I know that's something that's coming up for you, Callie. I was telling you off air that my friend just bought a house and decided, like, it happened very quickly. Like, within the last month, she put up her house, sold the house in 2 days, and then bought a house like within a week, and like is closing on the house in 3 weeks. Like, it happened so fast, which is so indicative of the energy as well. A lot of Aquarius Uranus energy moves very, very quickly. We're all air right now, like a lot of air, just everything happens so fast. So yeah, you want to talk about that in your life, Callie? I know that's been a theme too.
Yeah, that's so funny that so many people have been experiencing the same kind of patterns that I've been feeling on that collective level too with the airy energy, because I was feeling kind of restless at the beginning of the year, and it just was something that I felt like I needed to look into, was to potentially move from my hometown. And it was like just a thought, like just a quick glimpse of a thought, like maybe this could be potentially possible. And it's so funny because I look back at a text message and I had said maybe I need to move to Florida to a friend a couple of weeks ago. And so it was like just from planting that seed that I should potentially move to Florida, it all fell into place to where my boyfriend got a job down there, and we ended up finding out basically that this was all plausible and all completely possible. So it was like I
Amazing.
manifested a move in the last 3 weeks. And it's something that I am so looking forward to. But like you said, like there's just all these foggy energies that have been coming up. Like it feels like my higher self is telling me like this is exactly where you need to go, but just trust that the next steps are going to show themselves to you, because you're not going to know everything all at once, like a place to live and just all of those fine details as far as that goes. It's like just trust and just allow the fog to slowly clear itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like once you do get clarity on like the big decision, then the little pieces tend to fall into place more easily. But it's like there's been a lot of patience when it comes to like making the actual choice. And that's where like a lot of the Neptune has been that I've seen. It's like once you get clarity, it's like you can manifest so quickly right now because of all the energy that's in air signs. And so it's like once you decide, it's like, well, be careful what you wish for because you're going to get it really quickly if you like decide to go after something, which is amazing. I've definitely just seen, I mean, I've been a lot busier in the month of January. Like I feel like I was I remember like only two specific periods of this month. Like it was January 6th with all of those events. And then fast forward to like inauguration. And now it's like the 29th. Like it's just been like a lot of the month has been kind of a blur and just moving so quickly. I don't know if it's been the same for you, but it's
Yeah.
just been like, I can't believe like it's almost February.
It's definitely that airy or that Aquarius like airy
Yeah,
energy where
exactly.
it's just everything's going just in the blink of an eye. Like this month really has flown by. It's and sometimes I'm still writing 2020 on my papers because it doesn't feel like
Oh,
we're already into
no,
it.
I know, same. And like with that conjunction, like that Saturn Jupiter conjunction on the 21st of December, that's when everything started moving into Aquarius. And like I could feel on that day, like, so Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which rules the nervous system. I was like really uneasy that day. I was like, I know a lot of like astrologers and people in the spiritual community, they're like, oh my gosh, it's like the great awakening, this great shift. We're going to 5D, like it's all happening. And it's like, I actually felt really anxious that day. Like I wasn't grounded because we went from all of this Capricorn earth energy, like very stable, grounded, even though it was all kind of collapsing and coming apart, it was still very earth-based energy into like I could just feel it shift into air and I was like, whoa.
On the
Like,
21st, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, oh my, it took me like a week to get my bearings and kind of get used to it. And then
I
everything
felt the
happened
same.
so fast. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you said that because I listened to a video from Lori Ladd. I don't know if you
Oh
follow
yeah.
her,
Mhm.
but she told me something. She told me the collective something that just really resonated with me that week because I was judging myself so harshly because I thought maybe the 21st, like I had all these expectations in my mind that I was going to feel amazing. Like I was going to feel this five-dimensional consciousness just pour over me and it was just going to be this magnificent beautiful experience, and then that week my nervous system was the same way where it was like
Really? Oh, you felt it
every
too?
oh yeah, like every little thing that I wanted to let go of was showing itself to me. It's like I was on edge, I had fear, I
Yeah.
had anger, I had like all of these little things come up for me, and I was being so much into my judgment of myself for being that way. And she made a video where she talked about how everything that we're experiencing is valid and how it does not we do not have a hole in us that takes out all of the 5D energy and just pours out of us. We are that container for the 5D energy. And so, regardless of what was happening on an internal level, we were meant to be experiencing that. And so, that was for me really confirming because I was the same way.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I had judged myself for it too. I'm like, well, like what like I don't know. It just felt like it felt like waiting for the ball to drop. Like I was on edge, like something bad. It felt like something bad was gonna happen. Like, and I remember going for a walk around my neighborhood. I just felt so ungrounded. And I really had to like pull out all of my tools. Like I was like, bare feet in the grass, in the rain, in the mud of Portland, of course, and meditating and red light therapy. I was like journaling so much. And honestly, it just had to pass. Like it was like one of those situations where I just had to go through it and allow everything to come up. Like the things that normally worked didn't. And when I thought I was out of it, then another wave would come.
Mm.
And it was just like up until like Christmas, Christmas felt better. And then it was like that in between again, like that's, I feel like was really the height of that, like in limbo feeling, that I think we all get as a collective, like in between Christmas and New Year's, where it's like you don't know what you're supposed to do with your time and it feels so uncomfortable. And you're like, well, it's not the New Year, so I don't really want to start anything. And then like it was just a really weird thing. And then like I feel like all of us, like no matter like what side of the spectrum you're on politically, a lot of us were feeling really uneasy like up until inauguration day, because like everything just happened so strangely around the election, which the election took place during a Mercury retrograde. And so I wouldn't be surprised. I think today or tomorrow is the first day of Mercury retrograde again. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see some stuff in the news about election fraud or things about the election coming up again, because usually it's like a repeat of whatever happened before as like kind of to finish it off. Like that's why it's not great to start something new during Mercury retrograde, because it's really a time to reflect and tie up loose ends more so than like start something new. And so I'm curious what's going to come up around that. I feel like we're not quite out of the woods when it comes to that. I hate to say it, but like, I don't know. That's just my prediction with that. But yeah, it's
so much on the global level too that just really isn't being talked about here, with a lot of like the Italian government and the Russian government, and
there's a
a
lot.
lot of a lot of people stepping down and admitting to things that are not being talked about here. I think that's probably, I'm sure, part of the placements too. Like we've been in a huge fog as a collective as far as them putting
Totally. Well, yeah, like
lives.
Neptune square the nodes, that showed up so clearly during the election process. Like that was like the perfect, and with the pathogen going around. I don't want to say it, I don't want to get censored. A certain thing in the air, like first of all, of course, like that all happened the first time that Saturn went into Aquarius. And Aquarius air is all about the invisible enemy. Why do you think he called it that? It's like, it's something that we can't see, touch, taste, or feel. It's this invisible enemy. That's such an air quality to like have some sort of pathogen that you can't see causing a bunch of havoc, and so it's like that was our first taste of that Saturn in Aquarius. And so it's interesting now that, Saturn's in Aquarius permanently, how that's all going to play out and how it's going to affect our way of life, for the next few years, while Saturn's in Aquarius. So it's interesting. And like but my point with bringing that up is it's like that Neptunian fog where nobody can agree how it started, what protocols to use, why it's spreading the way it is. Like there's so much fog and confusion around it. So it's showing up so much in the collective. So if you're out there and you're feeling confused about what's going on in the world, like you can't, discern what's true and not true. And if you have some confusion in your personal life, that's why. Don't feel bad about it. We're all going through it. Like, I mean, I've talked to so many people who they're like, I want to move, but I don't know where to. I just know that I don't fit in. I don't really belong here. That's Saturn and Aquarius. Because like Aquarius is like the group, what's our place in the group? And then there's been restrictions, Saturn placed upon how we interact with the group, social distancing, not being able to be around each other, having to go more online. But then restrictions then being placed online, people getting censored. And so now there's a rise of alt tech, which is a very Aquarian thing. And I think we're just going to continue to see more and more of alt tech, changes in the financial system with more nothing more Aquarian than Bitcoin, something that you can't see, going from like earth-based money that you can see, touch, feel, and hold to something that's in the ether. Really, there's no like physical money. It's like all digital. And I think that that's really what we're going to see. And I mean, we'll be in the Aquarian age for like 2000 years. So it's not like all going to happen at once. But it's going to slowly start to go in that direction, from what I've researched.
Yeah. So tell me about tell me a little bit more about the Aquarian energy specifically for anybody who has their Saturn in Aquarius right now.
Yeah, so there's a great site that you can look up your chart with the transits, to get an idea of like when your Saturn will be what we call exact, which is basically means like every 28 to 30 years, Saturn will go all the way around your natal chart wheel and it'll go back right exactly where Saturn was in the sky when you were born. And so if you were born between like 93 to 91-ish, you're probably going to have Saturn in Aquarius. And so you're probably feeling Saturn more than others. Or if you're, 50, I believe, you're going to be going through your second Saturn return. So in your 50s. So see where Saturn is in your chart. If it's in Aquarius, congratulations, you're about to go through your Saturn return. We both are. So, yeah, so basically, if you go to astro.com, you're going to be able to see where your Saturn is, but then you also want to see what house it's in. So like what house Aquarius is in for you. So for me, I'm an easy example because I'm an Aries rising. And so your rising sign in astrology is what dictates kind of how the planets are laid out on your natal chart. So for me, the energy is always just double because all of the planets naturally fall into their house rulership. I hope I'm saying that the right way. But basically, my Saturn in Aquarius is in the 11th house that's ruled by Aquarius and Uranus. So it's, I've already been feeling it. So basically, Saturn is going to be that time period when you get your Saturn return. It's where you'll feel like you're going to age a lot in the next few years because it's really like, I see it as kind of like a rite of passage in a sense. Like it's really in astrology, you're not really considered an adult until you've gone through your Saturn return because it's like the ultimate maturing process. So, if you look at somebody pre and post Saturn return, they'll be like kind of a different person because it's just like there's so much that happens between your late 20s to 30 and on. It's like, it's like a totally different energy. There's something about Saturn that comes around and says, hey, this is kind of where you're not on track in your life purpose. And so I'm going to kind of come in and like take things away that are out of alignment or like shift things in your life. I'm going to show you where you're not taking responsibility. It's like that like father archetype of like, it's like you're grounded until you clean your room, It's trying to teach us like how do you function as an adult in the world. And so based on like what house Saturn and Aquarius is in for you will give you an idea of what area of life is going to be impacted. So then we take Aquarius. Aquarius is all about the collective. It's kind of like the rebel archetype. It's has a lot to do with scientific innovation. It's kind of like the wacky scientist, which is why we see a lot of stuff around experimental medical treatments. That's very Aquarian. And it has to do with like your place within the group. Like, can you maintain your individuality as an individual and belong to a group? And have both of those simultaneously, because the darker, or what we would say the shadow side of Aquarius energy is like group think, where you kind of just mold yourself to fit in with the crowd instead of being an individual and standing for what you believe in and being that like rebel warrior archetype of like, I'm going to fight for my right. It's very much like can be a very empowering energy in that way. And I had heard an astrologer talk about the energy of the sixth is such a good example of this with the insurrectionists, where Saturn went into Aquarius and all of the planets, the big planets that were in Capricorn for all of 2020, moved into Aquarius. And so Capricorn is like government structures, and Aquarian is the people. And the people stormed the government structure. So that's like a perfect real life illustration of the energy that you can kind of expect to see is the people rising up and taking their power back over the suppressive government structures. Now, unfortunately, that takes time to unfold. So you may see some more limitations coming from government, all the social distancing and the you have to wear a mask and you have to do this and censorship, like that's the darker side of Saturn Aquarius. But it's just going to lead to innovation, which is the good side of it. Like, okay, screw you, I'm going to make my own social media. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, even if it's scary, even if I stick out like a sore thumb in the crowd. I know that if I'm authentic and I show up as myself and I speak up for what I believe in, then I'll attract the right people, which is like the positive, like being surrounded by your people that really resonate with who you authentically are instead of you trying to fit in and having kind of the wrong people around you. So you could see a lot of shift in your friendships in this Saturn return with Saturn Aquarius. You may move and be surrounded by different people because it's a shift in your community. So yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. And so I would say the way to get through it is to, and that's kind of being highlighted by the full moon in Leo that we're in right now, because whenever you look at an energy, you want to look at its opposite. So Aquarius is opposite Leo. And so that's why the full moon's in Leo, because the sun's in Aquarius. It's always opposite. And so how do we fit in into society and like do our day to day and get by, but also be the individual? Well, Leo says, stand up, use your voice, be authentic, don't be afraid to be seen and heard. And if you do that, then you'll attract the right community and you'll thrive in this energy. So it's actually like Saturn originally ruled Aquarius, like back in the day. The new ruler is Uranus. So actually it's kind of a good placement for a Saturn return. It's the one of the less challenging ones. But it still has its challenges clearly, which we're seeing with, some of the restrictions and technological issues. But
so if you go on astro.com, you can look at where your Saturn placement basically was when you were born. And then whenever that comes back around, when you're somewhere between the ages of 28 to 30, that's when you're experiencing your coming into yourself. So I've been, just to like repeat it for the people out there that maybe want to look theirs up to see if this applies to you, because I'm sure many of you who are around our age are going through this as well. And mine is actually in May, which is the month after I'm supposed to be moving to Florida. So I'm moving in April and my Saturn return is in May.
Wow. Oh my God. Mine's not till 2022. And I'm one of the lucky people that it's hitting exact 3 times because Saturn goes retrograde.
Yeah. So how long is yours for? Or like, does it?
I think it's like, I'll start feeling it next January and be feeling it basically the whole year.
When I looked mine up, it said it was 9 months. So I don't know if that means that.
Yeah, mine's 9-10 months.
So then it probably was in retrograde then when I was born.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I was just curious if that's like what it means.
Yeah, because that's why, because for M, like it only hits once.
And And I've seen like, yeah, my sister's is only once, but mine, it said it was from May of this year until January of next year, like right when yours starts.
Wow. Well, I'll be calling you up and be like, how do I get through this?
Yeah. And my Aquarius is in my first house. So
Oh
of
my
six.
gosh. Yeah. So that's like the house of personal identity and the self and, basically probably that can even be like the way you see yourself change. Like, so marriage could be on the table, something like that, where it's like the way that you are in society fundamentally changes, like your identity. Um, Being a Floridian, that's an identity change.
That's a huge identity change. That's what I was thinking. So that's
Mhm.
crazy.
Wow. I love
Astrology,
how that actually fit.
like,
That's amazing.
yeah, like it's always so divinely aligned. Like that's one thing that I have for certain learned about this last year is that, especially knowing that as a reflector, I feel the planetary energies very heavily. Is that
Mhm.
anytime I have something going on for me, I can always find something in astrology that validates the reason why I'm going through what it is that I'm going through at the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I feel like it's just the best way to get an objective feeling for what's happening because once I saw and understood like Neptune square the nodes, I'm like, oh, that's why I'm not thinking clearly. Okay, I'm gonna stop wasting my energy on this issue and allow itself to resolve itself. And it totally did. I just had to have like one conversation with my teacher and lo and behold, everything kind of worked out for me anyway. So it's crazy. It's like you can look at it and you can kind of check in with yourself. Okay, like where am I being like where's my blind spot here? It kind of shows you where your blind spot is, astrology and human design. I mean, because like in human design, like you were saying, as a reflector, basically, for those of you who don't know, a reflector in human design, they have the most open energy of any type. And so we went over the types in human design in our first podcast together. So they may want to go check that out. But basically, when you have all your centers open and white, not only are you taking in the energy from the people around you, from your environment, from the food you eat, and everything like that that impacts you, but also you're taking in cosmic energy. So, whatever's happening in the planets, you're going to feel in a very real way, which is actually amazing because that's why they say that reflectors are really students of life. Like they learn through life itself, they learn through nature, they learn through planetary cycles because they can actually like sit and download all of that energy and like straight up learn from it. Like if you wanted to like learn the energy of like Mercury or Uranus or Saturn Aquarius, you could just meditate on it and like channel messages about it, and you'd be surprised. Like you could literally start to really get a hold of on how it plays out personally and really get a deeper understanding than those of us who don't have all that openness could ever hope to. So it's a really cool thing. I mean, sometimes when I read charts, people don't like when they have open centers because they see it as a weakness. Um, but really my greatest strengths, just experiencing it personally and seeing it play out, is wherever I have openness is where I also have strength, because that's where I learn my lessons. Like whatever the theme of that center is, that's where I learn a lot of my lessons. And then I can kind of check in with myself. Once again, it can act as a mirror of like, okay, why am I having trouble making this decision? Am I expressing the energy of the center on the lower end of the spectrum or on the higher end that's actually going to help me pull out of this fog? And so I just think that astrology and human design are like a match made in heaven. Like I couldn't imagine actually using one without the other because they complement each other so well. Um, and so yeah, it's just sometimes I envy you reflectors. I mean, you get a lot of, good downloads from all of that energy coming through.
Yeah, well, I know that it's a huge gift, like, and I thank God, I think the universe, I thank myself for choosing this body all the time. But I can promise you, there was not a person who wanted to be here less me growing up. Like,
Mhm.
because I think I was so sensitive as a reflector that
Yeah.
I felt all of the problems. I felt like all of the energies that needed to be transmuted, like all of
Wow.
them. And so it's crazy how much knowing that I'm a reflector and knowing about my human design has changed me, because it almost makes me want to start tearing up, because it has like empowered me to truly embrace that that's who I am, and that those aren't me, that's somebody else, and that
Yeah.
I can feel that and allow it to go and transmute it in my own way.
That's so beautiful. And I was reading this way to kind of let go. I'm always trying to find new techniques for how to let go of energy. Because it's so easy in these kind of like heavy energy times to let it get the better of you and to feel really depressed by it, and um to not see a lot of hope for the future. Like, I know that a lot of people I talk to have been feeling that way, where they just kind of feel like they're being kicked when they're down. That's kind of how January has felt, where it's like, they want to have hope, but they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's like, I think that sometimes we can overcomplicate like our relationship with energy. Like, once you get more into spirituality, you think you need this elaborate like ritual to like shed energy, and you need to like, I don't know, like meditate on your chakras like 10 times a day. And and it's like, really, it's just, if you are honest with yourself about how you're feeling, and you process it out in a way that feels comfortable to you, and you just make the conscious choice to release it, that's really it. That's really it. It's when we ignore it and allow it to build and build and build and continue to cover it up and numb it out. That's another thing that Neptune's really good at. It's really good at numbing. Neptune rules like drugs and alcohol. And so, a lot of people, I know that substance abuse has gone up a lot, unfortunately. Um, and I get it. It's a really hard time to be alive, but it's like, if you have these conscious rituals and know that despite what's happening in the external world, that you can have whatever kind of life that you want to create, as soon as you start following a life that's in alignment with your higher self, you'd be shocked at the things and people and places and opportunities that start coming to you. And if you make a conscious intention to just not take on the energy, do a little meditation morning and night to just visualize yourself, being cleared out. Um, a friend of mine gave me this really, really amazing visual for the aura that I really want to share, because I just think it's so awesome. So I actually got an astrology reading of my own a couple of weeks ago from this amazing astrologer, Fiona Edgar, who I highly recommend. She does really great energy updates and podcasts. And I was talking to her about all of this, and she was saying, it's really great to visualize your aura being lit up in bright white light, but that actually isn't effective for everybody, especially if you're really, really sensitive, like you're a reflector, you have a lot of openness, or you're just energy sensitive, you're an empath. She said that she started visualizing her aura being covered in like sheet metal, with like, it's basically like armoring yourself up, and you can even visualize like metal spikes coming from your aura, like this big like shield going around you and protecting you with like spikes coming out. So it's like, nope, not taking it on. It's a really, really powerful visual, and I think it's really easy to visualize, and it just gives you that extra feeling and protection, so you don't feel like you have to kind of like hide away from the energy. Because that's something that I've worked with people on too, and I've noticed is like, when people are energy sensitive, they tend to just like hide and like not want to go out and interact, because they take so much on that it's just exhausting. And so like this visual, I've started doing it myself, and it's really powerful. And like, the good thing about it is, with the power of intention, you're not keeping the good from coming in. You're only keeping the bad from coming in. So you're still letting in all the love from your loved ones, the joy, the positivity, because there's plenty of good energy still out there. There always will be constantly. It's just that we live in a polarity planet, so there's also a lot of negative, but it's like if you just set that intention and visualize that like sheet of armor protecting you, and you set that intention and not take on the bad, you'd be surprised. It's actually really effective. So if
I'm gonna
anyone
start
out there
doing that.
struggling with that, I recommend that visual.
I'm definitely gonna start doing that now in the mornings and at night because I think on the last year and how much fear I've taken in, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that with just wanting to keep up with the news and
Yeah.
wanting to know what's going on. And that's another thing that's the Aquarius energy in me that I really love to know, and I love the information and I
Mhm.
love that aspect, but I also can't take all of it on, or otherwise I'm just exhausted and I'm just like
Yeah.
loaded with other people's fears and projections and that. So I think that that's really powerful for people, I'm sure, that have been diving down the rabbit hole this year and who have been taking in a lot of the fear messaging.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it's information overload right now. I mean, that's another thing about the nodes being in Gemini and Sagittarius is Gemini rules information. And so it's like, it's like because of how quick things happen too, it's like you could be on your phone all day, every day, getting constant updates, and it's never ending. Like there's so much going on. And I'm right there with you, Callie. I mean, that's a big thing that I had to learn in January, especially, and like with everything that unfolded, is like there were days where I was really not good about stepping away from it. And like I really, really, really felt it. And it just like it can feel like it's just really bleak. And I mean, the thing that I've seen in my own life is like whenever you have a really, really dark day or a bad day, usually a really, really good day follows. And that's how I feel about this energy is like we're coming out of the dark day and a new dawn is coming. And I think that through the course of the year, there's going to still be some difficult transits, but it's not anything like 2020 was. It's kind of like we need to come together as a collective, as individuals in a collective that hear each other out, that listen to each other's experiences, that learn. We have to learn from each other and come together instead of just, putting on, like covering our ears and pretending like nothing's happening and that we just need to trust the experts. Like the experts, their world is crashing because everything got obliterated in Capricorn, which is the authority figures. Like we have to be our own authority figures now. And so that's actually a really, really empowering thing. So when all of this disempowering energy is coming, it's just because when something is dying out, it kind of screams the loudest. So all the disempowering energy is like coming to a head and is at its peak because it knows that it's coming to an end. Like the empowerment for us as a collective and for us as individuals is inevitable. It's just that we have to kind of do our own inner work to let go of all our limiting beliefs and stories and fears and the way that we limit ourselves and the way that we kind of get ourselves into ruts and disempowering thinking in our own personal lives.
Mhm. True.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool though to, I mean, I've never spent so much time in astrology than I did in 2020. I think that that's been such a positive of this energy is that because we haven't had a lot of choices in what to do, I've learned so much this past year, like the amount of like it just, I mean, I've known about astrology for like 7 years, but I mean, I think I learned like 500% more than I have like in the last year than the last 7. It's just been crazy. Like it's such a good time to really connect to your spirituality and connect to the divination arts that connect you back to yourself, like astrology, human design, tarot, natural health, oils, meditation, everything like that. It's so that when we can go back into the world we'll be ready for it and we'll be a totally different version of ourselves.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you can see that shift happening, I think, with many people and just with us as a collective moving more into having to use these tools because we're seeing the impacts of not knowing ourselves and not being in tune with our health. And it's being very, very highlighted to us this last year.
Yeah, and a lot of us that have felt like kind of like the Aquarian outsider energy of like being into like all these alternative things before they were a thing, we're gonna kind of see like people starting to come around and be like, what's that thing that you recommended like 5 years ago? Like, because it's just gonna have to become more. I don't want to say it'll never be fully mainstream because with that conjunction we kind of do still see a splitting off. It's like very much, I think we've talked about this in other podcasts or maybe we just talked about it off air, but you kind of see a splitting where it's like you can be in a totally different reality than the person next to you based on what belief system you've created for yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what's kind of wild about this energy is that there will be some people who are just too stuck in their ways and they're going to be in that like what we call like the old earth, the old world. And then there's going to be some that, just kind of seamlessly transition into this new earth or new energy, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it 5D. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's a different version of reality than we've ever experienced before. And some people are just kind of going to be more seamlessly transitioned into that because it's just what comes more naturally. They've already kind of been the outsider. And so some people will jump onto that and some people will just like kind of go fear mode and just cling to the old. And
Mm-hmm.
so you just
I
have to like let people decide and not get too up in arms about it and not like waste your energy trying to like wake people up all the time because that's their own journey. And if they didn't wake up from like what happened in 2020, it's like gonna be a little bit hard to wake them up now.
mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like at the same time, like, you know, a lot of people are waking up in their own way. Like we were talking about the whole GameStop phenomenon that just happened and like how we can all agree that we're being screwed over by people who are cheating the stock market. And so the corruption was just like laid bare before us and for all to see. And I think that we'll continue to see a lot of stuff be revealed that will wake people up though. It's just they have to decide whether they want what they want to do with that information.
So true. I think that that was even divinely timed as far as uniting us all on a wavelength where we all are in agreement that we are being screwed over by the big men in white suits that have been manipulating the market for forever. And
Mhm.
it's the same thing with seeing the deplatforming and just all of these things that they're doing are just highlighting it. I think what we're seeing is almost that same energy of 2020 where it's like all this clarity is coming up, like 2020 vision, where we're just seeing things as
Yeah.
they are so that we can move forward without those things. And I think I'm seeing that last year has been a huge year of internal work, like just a huge year of
Yeah.
looking at myself with a microscope of like going through the shadow work and really looking at my limiting beliefs about myself and the way that I viewed myself. And I think that that's a microcosm almost of the macrocosm of that huge energy of we have to look at everything now as to what has our society been running on, and how can we change that because it's not sustainable. Just as I know that what I was doing myself was not sustainable either.
That's so true. And I think that, it's interesting with this Aquarius energy. It's like still very much a time where the best way to wake people up is, well, you kind of let the universe take the reins and expose all this corruption. So that's a piece of it. And then personally, instead of like trying to like go to your friends or family and like shake them awake, it's like you do that inner process of transformation and you lead by example and your transformation will speak for itself more than any convincing can do, because another piece of the Neptune fog, as we've been calling it, is that you can show them blatant proof of something and it's like they can't see it. It's like something will be in front of them and they just refuse to see it. And it's just because it's not their time to see it. And it's like it's easy to like make judgments about that, but it's just that, it's there's something in them that isn't ready to see it. And that's what's been really interesting is witnessing again that energy of like, here's the facts about this situation. I'm going to send you a bunch of articles and links, and it can even be like, something that's pretty non-disputable, and they'll still be like, yeah, but the news said this, because actually Neptune rules the media. So, it's meant to be a propaganda deceptive tool. And I think that people are really seeing that. And that's why they're trying to delete all these alt tech options, because they know that they're losing their power and they know that it's slipping away. And so then, they're like kind of flustered and in panic of like, they don't want to lose that power, even though they kind of know it's inevitable. So it's been really interesting to see that. And it's been interesting to see people continue to like take what the New York Times says is the Bible, of truth, like the ultimate pillar of truth and honesty. You still see that, but there is more and more and more people who are like, there's something off about this. Like, I think I might be getting scammed in some way. So I'm all about, just, I really think we are in the Great Awakening. I really do.
I agree. And it's moving from like, okay, this person told me this, so I'm gonna believe it, to this person said this, but that doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't feel right with me. And being able to go like and take that as their truth and move forward with your own. Because I think that this year has highlighted how much it's not a matter of how much people give to you, you have to feel it,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I think that's also like, even though you might not be going through your Saturn return, say, Saturn is still in Aquarius for everybody. So I think everybody is going to see a restructuring of their social circle. So that's why, a lot of people, they talk about in the past year, like, wow, somebody I was friends with for my whole life, we're not friends anymore because we don't see the world in the same way anymore. And I think that 2020 did that for a lot of people. People see their family differently, their friends differently. Um, and it's people coming together that have similar beliefs. And if you don't have that similar belief, it's very hard to relate anymore. And that's that Sagittarian, like my belief over yours kind of thing. But it's also like, oh wow, it's time to really find my real tribe, my real circle, because um it's just, otherwise it's just, you don't see the world in the same way, and it's just hard to relate. It's harder and harder to be inauthentic, I think, because you can't really hide from what's happening anymore. It's affecting everybody.
No, I mean, we wear what our beliefs are. I mean, you can see from the grocery store now if somebody's wearing 2 or 3 masks, or if
Yeah.
somebody's not wearing a mask, as to what reality they live in. And so I
That's
think you're
so
right
true.
about like this year just being that we have been living in the same reality as people, but living in completely different realities as people standing directly next to us. And so I heard somebody call this like a hinge year, where it's going to
Mm,
be like, we are going to move this direction. We're going to move to that new earth, the 5 dimensional, and we're going to have people still in that 3D, still in that matrix of fear and propaganda. And so I think that is like where we're going to divide, because these people aren't going to be moving in your direction. And so
yeah.
if you're listening to this podcast and if you are interested in these subjects, you are moving into that 5 dimensional earth. So this is just going to anchor you into that fear that's no longer serving us. That's not going to be our future.
Yeah, 100%. And, everybody, I really do feel that everybody has to learn specific lessons when they incarnate here. And so that's why I've had to be just careful of is being humble about like, I consider myself incredibly lucky to have the perspective and the experiences that I've had that woke me up earlier, but to also like see other people, if they decide to wear 3 masks, like that's their journey and it's happening for them that way for a reason, and they just have a different path than me, and that's okay. They can go that way and I can go this way, and hopefully we can both live in harmony separate from each other.
Yes.
Like the separation, you can feel that more than ever, but if we respect each other, I think that can be okay in a way. I think maybe that may be how things happen, is that I don't think we're gonna see that divide close anytime soon, honestly. And America is going through its Pluto return, which is very like split energies, which we can go into another time because it's like a whole nother subject. But um, the Pluto return is exact next year. And so this like that's why like it's been so crazy over here because it's America's first Pluto return. It happens I think every 250 years. And Pluto in Capricorn is why all these structures have really been transforming and falling, and why we've seen such like a shit show in politics. So that's going to continue, and that they're going to try to cling on to their power. um but once Pluto shifts into Aquarius, it's kind of over for them.
Mhm.
So it's going to
So
be
in the
interesting to
next
see how it
year,
plays out.
yeah, so in the next year, we're going to see more and more changes with that
Yeah,
aspect
for sure.
coming up. And you said it started in 2008, right? Right when the uh,
When Obama was
financial
elected.
crisis, the housing crisis of '08 happened too.
Yeah, because Pluto is in the second house, which is finances. Um, and so yeah, that's definitely going to be something that shifts. Um, and why I think that we will probably see like a very big change in our economic system and possibly into more crypto. And I mean, it's going to be interesting, but I don't think that like this idea of, I think sometimes people have this idea of Aquarius of like people singing Kumbaya around a campfire, like holding hands all together. That may be like way down the line, but with, the Pluto return, it's going to be very divided for a while. And so just being aware of that. And so if you see a shit storm like in America and in politics, because the United States is such like a dominant force in the world, it kind of affects the whole world. That's why all eyes are always on us, like in terms of like everybody was talking about the election, everybody was talking about what's happening in the United States because it has such an impact on the whole world. And so my point in bringing that up is if things continue to get a little bit crazy, the good thing about astrology is we can contextualize it, we can see what we're supposed to learn from it so that we can move past it and integrate the lessons and be better than we ever were before. Because it's actually a lot better, even though it's painful, it's a lot better when all this shit comes to the surface because it's always been there. It's just been hidden. And Pluto brings it all up to the surface. Pluto rules the underworld. It comes from the underworld up. That's why we've seen so much talk about tunnels and child trafficking. It's like the underworld, Pluto coming to the surface. We need to fix this. There's a lot of stuff that's very corrupt and malevolent happening that out of our awareness that's being brought and a light is being cast upon it, and so that we can transform and transmute it into something far better than we've ever been. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's why I love astrology. You can make sense of what's happening and you can see when we can expect it to kind of get a little bit better too. We can
Mhm.
see that it's not forever. um, and so that's what I really love about it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be so good. I mean, everybody knows we need change, we just got to go
Absolutely.
through it.
And you were just talking about earlier, like how you were talking about waves, and it's so funny because that theme just keeps coming up, not just because I'm moving to Florida, but just that life comes in waves.
Yeah,
And
it does.
so it's like what you said with sometimes like the dark needs to happen in order for the light to come. It's like those ebbs and flows. And so just feeling into the ebb and knowing that that is what is meant to be for our highest good. Like there are so many people this year that probably were like, you know what, fuck 2020, I hate
Yeah.
this. And I'm sure there are still a lot of people that feel that way, but think about the person that you were before that happened and think about the person that you are now. It's like it was definitely meant to happen to shake up the way that we were doing things and the way we were moving throughout the world, because it has been so necessary. Like all of the
Yeah.
breakups, all of the friendship breakups, all of the shifts that have happened, whether that's you questioning what it is that you want to do with your life and knowing that there's something bigger out there that you want to do. You know, there's just been so many things that I think have been shaken up because of this ebb that is going to send us into another wave, another flow in what we're actually meant to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, everything in our planet, that's why astrology works and why it's so valid is because it illustrates the natural cycle of things. That there's a dark and that there's a light and that there's an in-between time too. And that we're meant to learn from these cycles. I mean, every woman has a cycle every month, a menstrual cycle, whether or not they bleed, they still have a cycle that's occurring internally in their body. And nature has a cycle, everything has a cycle, everything ebbs and flows, like you were saying. And so if we always expect things to stay the same and to be easy, I mean, it's kind of like if you sit on the couch for a year, like say you just sit on a couch and you don't use your muscles all year, you're going to find even doing the dishes challenging because you haven't had any stress on your muscle, on your skeletal system. You haven't had any resistance or stress. So you haven't been using it. And so we actually become really weak, and we don't grow in the way that we should if we don't have these darker periods that keep us honest and that keep us on track and that get us to that next level or into a different cycle. And so I mean, who knows, like if you would be have decided to make the leap for Florida if 2020 hadn't happened. I mean, there's so many people making such amazing changes in their lives because of that, because they've had all this time to reflect and see um, what they want going into the future. And so I think it's so necessary. I wouldn't trade it for anything, like the hard times. And I've thought about this, that it's like there's probably like a 0.000000001% chance of being alive at this time and to be listening to this podcast and to be aware of what's going on. And it's honestly such an honor and a privilege to be alive at this time, at this historic time in human evolution. And, if you're in the United States of our country, like this is the first Pluto return. Like we're going to see our country completely transform, our government completely transform. We're going to completely transform. I mean, it's a challenging, but also such an incredible time, honestly.
It really is. It's amazing. And I really feel like one of the best tools that we could give is to keep doing things like this, to give people more tools into what's going on astrologically, and even diving deeper into, like we talked a little bit today about the open centers and
Oh,
where
yeah, I
I'm
know we
really
didn't get to that.
susceptible. Yeah, like where, like, because I have all of the open centers, very susceptible to the planetary transits and that, and everybody has, an open center where they are more susceptible to the planetary energies and things. So
Mhm.
we should definitely go deeper into that in a future podcast episode
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely, I'd love to.
Yeah. So we were just talking about this before we hit record on the podcast, but this sparked the idea to give some cosmic energy updates every so often so that you guys can stay up to date with what's happening and also learn about some different tools on how to navigate the energies. So if this is something that you would be interested in, we would love to hear your feedback. Both of us are both available through social media. as well as through our websites if you would like to contact us there. So
Yeah,
do you have anything
absolutely.
else that you want to add before we conclude this energy update, this podcast episode, this much needed conversation after having
I know.
absorbed everything from the last month?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add, like, I would really, really love it if people share down below or comment how they've experienced this energy. I think the best way to learn astrology is to learn from each other and see how the energy is expressing itself in the everyday reality. So please, you guys, share down below, how have you been feeling lately? How is January for you? Are you feeling that Neptune fog? Are you clear as day? Have you been seeing a lot of shifts in your personal life? Just catch us up. I love to see how it plays out and just connect to everybody. And if anybody's interested in getting their human design chart read, I do infuse astrology into it. You can visit me at my website, theripenedheart.com. And I've started leading Human Design 101 circles. Actually, the first one's tonight. You guys won't be seeing this until after it's over, but if you guys are interested in that, I will start doing that as well, just so that I feel like, with all the social distancing and everything, people are feeling so lonely that I just want to give people more ways to connect with each other. And so I just think that circles are a beautiful way to do that. These podcasts are a beautiful way to connect virtually, which is Saturn and Aquarius. So
I
yeah,
love it.
I love doing this. So thank you so much, Callie, for having me on again.
Yeah, of course. I love it. And I always love our conversation. So thank you for your tidbits of wisdom. And we will definitely be picking up where we left off with the Pluto return
Yes.
and, of course, the open centers in human design, too. So thank you all for
Thank you,
tuning in,
guys.
and bless you for
Bye.
being here during this time.
You're doing great.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.